Hi, everyone. I'm Sue Hilliard, and I am especially happy this evening to welcome our newest speaker to EA Zoom meetings, as I was incredibly honored to help him with the editing of his latest book, The Spirituality of the Beatles. We're thrilled to have Eric Meyers here to talk about the book, and specifically the song Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, which has some incredibly awesome astrology associated with it. In fact, as I read the book, I just kept saying, wow. Here's hoping that everyone else who reads it is equally as enchanted. Eric is an evolutionary astrologer from the US Pacific Northwest who has written 6 other astrology books. Welcome, Eric. Go ahead.
All righty. Thank you so much, Sue. So let me go to my presentation. And I have to hit the share button, right?
Yeah.
Share screen. Okay, here we go.
And then you might want to explain when you'll take questions, and I'm going to mute myself.
Okay. So can you see it now?
Yes, I do see it. Yep.
Okay,
Perfect.
good. Yeah, I think it might be easiest to take questions at the end. So we're going to go through it, and I'll leave time at the end for questions. All righty. So one little technical thing. The book is actually titled The Spiritual Dimension of the Beatles. Not the spirituality of the Beatles, but that's fine for this talk. Okay, so let's get into it. So a couple things about me. On this slide, I just put a couple things on my background. I did get my master's in what's called transpersonal counseling psychology at Naropa University in Boulder, Colorado. And I got my bachelor's in psychology from American University. I did study with Stephen Forrest for about 5 years at the start of the century. And there's a list of some of my other books, my website, and my email address. All right, let's get into it. Okay, a few background points to make on the song. This is an image from the Yellow Submarine movie where the song is featured in that movie. Okay, so the first session for the development of the song as it was being created was on February 28th, 1968. I'm sorry, 1967. That's a mistake there. I will correct that later. 1967. And then the album came out in June of 1967. Okay, so famously, the song was inspired by the artwork of John's son, Julian, that he did. He was just almost 5 years old at the time. And he was inspired and was connected to a little girl in his class named Lucy O'Donnell, hence the name Lucy. John also speaks about Alice in Wonderland. He was reading and influenced at the time. And as most people are aware, the song has been linked with LSD, as seen in the title, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, LSD. And unfortunately, the song has been kind of written off by many people as just kind of a drug trip, and not seen as really having deeper value or significance. And that's unfortunate if people were to view it that way, because I will say that in studying everything in the Beatles catalog obsessively, this song, more than most, does have incredible meaning, many levels to it, many dimensions, and it's not just a drug trip. The Beatles did use, substances, and that is part of their story. But as I write in the book, it's broader than that. Their inspiration comes from dreams, it comes from meditation, it comes from their own ability to be conduits from other realms. So I hope that people don't just write it off in terms of drugs. Is that this song is consistent with a theme on the album Sgt. Pepper. There is a connection to family, roots, and youth. So having Julian be the inspiration here in his picture, it does connect with those themes of family and youth, which is on the album in other ways. So here's the image of the artwork by Julian Lennon. And so pretty good for a young kid, I would say. I'm not going to go into trying to analyze what we see here, but you can make your own assumptions and see what you want in it. But that is the original artwork. Okay. So I thought I'd start with the lyrics. So I'm going to read them and we're going to come back. I'm going to kind of toggle back and forth as we do this talk. So we're going to return later on, but let's read the lyrics initially. Okay, so here's how they go. Picture yourself in a boat on a river with tangerine trees and marmalade skies. Somebody calls you, you answer quite slowly, a girl with kaleidoscope eyes. Cellophane flowers of yellow and green towering over your head. Look for the girl with the sun in her eyes, and she's gone. Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, the chorus. Follow her down to her bridge by a fountain where rocking horse people eat marshmallow pies. Everyone smiles as you drift past the flowers that grow so incredibly high. Newspaper taxis appear on the shore, waiting to take you away. Climb in the back with your head in the clouds, and you're gone. Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, the whole chorus. And finally, picture yourself on a train in a station with plasticine porters with looking glass ties. Suddenly, someone is there at the turnstile, the girl with kaleidoscope eyes. Okay, let's get into it. Okay, the first thing I want to mention before we look at the astrology is throughout the book is something I have come to call the Arc of Awakening. And what this is the degree of connection between Uranus and Pluto, which formed a conjunction in the middle years of the 1960s. So at the peak of the arc would be when Uranus and Pluto are tightest, most exact, which I'm depicting as an elevation of their energy together. So in 1961 is when Uranus came into a 10-degree orb of a conjunction with Pluto. And then as the early 60s unfolded, the Beatles' first music, their first singles came out in 1962 as it was rising. In 1963 was the first album. 1964, things are rising more. They appear on Ed Sullivan, more albums coming out. And then in late 1965 is the first peak. And then in 1966, there's two exact hits between them while the arc is peaking. And then in 1967, when this album came out, Sgt. Pepper, the motion is now descending. And 68 is around here where things are starting to come down off of the peak, what I call the transcendence period, where the song was written, when things are most elevated, lofty. And so the higher we go, the idea is that the more connected to loftier levels of consciousness, to connect with the spiritual, the metaphysical, the transpersonal, whatever you like to call it. And then we return back down to ground as that epic conjunction is separating. In the later 60s, it's coming down. And the movie Get Back, that it just was released, as we were talking about before this presentation, that was in early 1970. And that's when matters are back on the ground. And what that means is that the music at that time is not theorized to be as inspired. It's more about getting back, and that's the name of the movie, getting back to roots, getting back to matters on the ground after all of the inspired, really experimental, really lofty music of the middle period, which basically at the peak covers the Help album, Rubber Soul, Revolver, Magical Mystery Tour, Sergeant Pepper. And those are the ones that would be around the peak. And then the White Album is coming down in what I call the individuation period in 1968. And then in 1969 is Abbey Road and Let It Be. And then the Ark releases in 1970 when they break up. So in the 9 years that it was functional, is they met Brian Epstein right as the Ark was rising in 1961, and they broke up in 1970 when it was ending. And in between, as I say, it was quite the ride. So here's the astrology. Okay, so what you can see here, here's Uranus, which at this point, and this again, this is when the song was first being recorded, February 28th, 1967. And at this point, it's still rather tight. As you can see, Uranus is at 22 degrees Virgo and Pluto's at 19. They're only 3 degrees away, which is pretty tight. And that correlates with it being as elevated as you saw a minute ago. So we're going to stay with this slide for a few minutes and talk about the astrology and really get an understanding of what was going on here. And then the rest of the presentation is not going to really have much astrology at all. We're just going to get into the song. So this is it, basically. So let's talk about it in depth. Okay, well, the first thing to mention is that there is a Kite configuration in 1967 that was operable with different planets occupying different points of the Kite for really a few months of early 1967, from roughly January through May or June. This Kite configuration was in place. And the reason why is because it's composed of planets that move rather slowly. And then different ones would come in and join it and form different kites during those months of 1967. So here's what it looked like at the start of recording this particular song. So a kite is also a common depiction of a diamond. So here's the diamond to the left, tilted on the side. And as you can see, it resembles what was going on in the sky, literally. So yes, there was a diamond in the sky for Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. Okay, so the Arc of Awakening, the Uranus-Pluto conjunction, was basically right on the ascendant, and the spine of the kite is on the ascendant with Saturn and Chiron at the base of the kite. So let's talk about that first. The Uranus-Pluto conjunction is this awakening into the metaphysical, kind of into the multidimensional scope of the 60s, as seen in the middle period of the Beatles, with this song being a leading example. It's just an opening to the metaphysical. Okay, now there's also relevance with death, which is something we're going to talk about later, is Uranus-Pluto, the awakening to transform death itself. Pluto going with the Scorpio archetype, Pluto, Hades, the underworld. It deals with shadow, taboo things, including death. And so that is a big theme of the whole story, as seen in the book, is the transformation of death. And we'll get to that more later. But more broadly, it's an opening to the metaphysical. And then Saturn is about structure, organization, here in Pisces, of the dream realm, of things to do with consciousness, things to do with journeys, perhaps, which brings in Jupiter and Neptune, which are in a grand trine with that Saturn and Pisces. So we really have this depiction of the journey of consciousness, Jupiter, Neptune, Saturn, and Pisces, all connected in to the Uranus-Pluto conjunction. So you have all of the characters or energies, all the planets that have to do with metaphysics in a flowing, harmonious relationship, a grand trine. So we've got, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, all the outer planets connected in with Jupiter and Saturn. So this is extremely rare. I've been studying astrology for 23, 24 years. I've never seen all these planets lined up in a configuration like this ever before or after this time frame. So this is unique. You don't have astrology like this that often. So let's break it down even further. Okay. So we've got the structure of the dream, something to do with dreams or the imagination with Saturn. But Chiron involved also has to do with something healing, which is a theme more personally, which is what was going on for John. We also see that with the lower wing, with the moon in Scorpio, with Neptune. Again, something healing, perhaps to do with death, Scorpio, or loss, or grief. Moon, Neptune could have something to do with that. And then I also included Vesta. Vesta can go with projects. And Neptune and Scorpio, I discuss in the book as connected with spiritualism. And so a project, the song, a craft, something creative to do with spiritualism that has resonance with something emotional that is healing something wounded, connected in with the structure, the base of the kite, a professional work, structure, organizing, something to do with the imagination. And then Jupiter in Cancer is also a journey into roots, into home, into family types of themes. So all of this is in connection with this amazing astrological configuration called the kite, which resembles a diamond. So all of that is going on here. Now, another thing with Jupiter in Cancer in the 11th, that gives the public reach into the collective consciousness is Jupiter in the 11th. But I would say that the most significant thing about the astrology is that the kite or the diamond shape at the start of the first recording session fell right along the horizon, right along, the horizon, things below is in darkness, things above are in light. And the theme here of bridging worlds, above to below, just the perfect symmetry of this is quite astounding. And we're going to be talking about bridging above to below. That is a theme of the song. And so, as I mentioned in the book, it's almost like we can fold the kite. The upper can be folded to the lower, and we see the concordance of what is happening above has concordance or relevance with the realms below. So bringing sky or metaphysics to earth, to ground dreams into manifest reality. This is the theme of the song. And that's what is depicted with this really incredible astrology that is quite rare. Okay, so we're going to return to this as we go, but that's a brief little intro. but in interest of time, let's keep it rolling. Okay. So let me minimize that so I can read. Okay, here we go. So I actually brought in some excerpts from the book, and I thought to just read a little bit so you can get a flavor of the writing and what I'm actually saying there in the book. So the name Lucy derives from the Latin word lux, which means light. And it shares the same root as lucid, to make visible. Interestingly, in some cultures, the name was given to girls born at dawn, which is interesting because the astrological ascendant is the point of dawn where light is made visible. And there we have the Uranus-Pluto conjunction right on the ascendant, the point of dawn. Okay, so we can imagine Lucy then sitting at the tip of the diamond kite shape on the ascendant where this arc of awakening is located. You can imagine Lucy right there. So as I mentioned, the arc involves the breakthrough into other dimensions or paradigms. This song, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, is the one in the entire book, the one that points to astrology itself, because it involves geometry, diamond, illuminated, Lucy, and the sky. Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, the illumination of geometrical figures. Okay, we're going to get into that more in a minute. So aside from the shape, another facet of diamonds, of course, is that they have immense value. They're considered one of the most precious gemstones. So this song might be revealing something metaphysical, the sky, that has value, diamonds, to be seen, Lucy. Okay, so I discuss the songs in many categories throughout the book. There's actually 10 different threads, 10 different types of songs. We have solar songs, dream songs, death songs, dark songs, call songs. Those are the major categories. And then the minor categories include bird songs, violence songs, flute songs, rain songs, and one other. There's 10. That escapes my mind at the moment. But don't worry about it. It's in the book. There's one other category. But Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds is the prototypical dream song. And I want to go back to the astrology for a minute, because I talked about Saturn in Pisces. Now, Saturn's at 29 degrees Pisces for this song. So it's almost like when something's at the final degree, it can be seen as almost like the summation, is that Saturn was in Pisces for 2.5 to 3 years, and it just was about to move to Aries right after this song. So it's the prototypical dream song that comes in almost as a summation or the final kind of delivery of Saturn transiting through Pisces for about 3 years. So it kind of summarizes, it's kind of like your final, as I'm saying. Now, it's also just happens to be the 27th dream song already in the catalog. I think that there's 42 dream songs, so there's about 15 more after Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. And there's many different ways a song qualifies to being a dream song. This one being most obvious. It's an excursion through a most detailed dreamscape. So at the peak of the arc, back in 1966, John wrote the song Tomorrow Never Knows. And in that song, he instructs the listener to, quote, relax and float downstream, and to, quote, listen to the color of your dreams. And that's a dream song, of course. And now, with the arc still incredibly high, he writes, picture yourself in a boat on a river. to engage the imagination, Pisces, of sailing through an assemblage of colorful and dreamlike imagery, the tangerine trees and marmalade skies. So I saw this image doing an internet search, creating this presentation. And here we see the depiction of someone in a boat on a river. And there's the tangerine trees and marmalade skies. And there's the sun too. And there's a girl, of course, who we'll be talking about in a minute. Okay, so that's how we get started, is things of the imagination. So think about from the astrology, is we're beginning here with things in the upper realm, things that are not of the manifest world. We're looking at things within the sky, metaphysics, consciousness, things of the imagination. And then we're going to move downward and get grounded. And we're going to be joining the two wings of the kite together. But this is where we're starting, is a journey, Jupiter, of the imagination. Okay. So next, John writes that somebody calls you, you answer quite slowly, the girl with kaleidoscope eyes. Now, this song is also in the classification of being what I call a call song, which, believe it or not, there's 35 songs that qualify to being a call song. And most of them are at the beginning of the catalog. In fact, in the first 3 albums, you have 14 call songs just to begin it. Now, I listed a few of them here. P.S. I Love You is reaching out via a letter. From Me to You, Bridging Distance is another way to understand a call song. It Won't Be Long, is a call song. The Reunion Is Going to Happen. The song I Call Your Name is all about John laying on his bed, calling the name of his beloved. Another one, Anytime at all you got to do is call and I'll be there. So what I discovered in my research is that the beginning part of the songwriting had so many examples over and over and over, calling out for reunion. I also call the call thread the reunion thread. And it's about bridging distances. It's about reuniting with a lost love, because John and Paul both lost their mothers when they were teenagers. And what I write about is we can look at a lot of these call songs as the attempt to establish a reunion with the lost love, projected into the guise or the realm of romance, of boy-girl romanticism, is kind of the projection of the underlying spiritual or emotional issue of loss of the beloved. I believe that John and Paul, as seen in their astrology with their mothers, have deep, deep soul bonds. And that is the deeper layer of what they're longing for. So in the transcendence phase, the call is answered. And that happens in 1965, 66. And here at this point in 1967, we see many songs where calls are now coming in. And Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds is an example of calls coming in. He's being called. The author, the speaker, is being called by the girl with the kaleidoscope eyes. So you don't have any examples of this at the beginning, but it happens at the transcendence phase. Another one is the song Across the Universe, where John mentions being called on and on across the universe. It's a similar idea. In fact, that song is another journey. It was written, the first iteration of Across the Universe was actually written in 1967. And so there's a parallel going on there. But that song didn't really get its first recording session till 1968. That's what I was confused by when I put the wrong date in, is because Across the Universe was in early 1968. So those two songs have a lot of overlap. The point being is that calls are now coming in. Okay, so from the girl with kaleidoscope eyes. Okay, so what are kaleidoscopes? They are noted for their shifting geometric patterns. You put it up to your eye and you move it around, and you're looking at colorful shifting geometric patterns. And so Lucy is the girl with kaleidoscope eyes, so she's able to see shifting geometric patterns, is the idea here, in the sky, which relates again to astrology. So we have the kite configuration, which is a geometric, is geometry in the sky. And as I illustrate in the transcendence period, is that there is a variety of very precise geometrical patterns that are evident in the sky around this time. Now, there are at other times as well. You know, you can have a grand cross or a T square or the kite, or even at this time was a five-pointed grand quintile, making a five-pointed star. These things were all going on, and I illustrated in the book. And so there was an unusually large amount of these precise geometric figures around this time. But I also am making the point that they can be, of course, at other times. There just happened to be a lot at this time. So Lucy is not only has kaleidoscope eyes, she's also the girl with the sun in her eyes. And what the sun is about is awakening or awareness, the ability to see, having illumination. And so the teaching is to see the designs in the sky. So all of the solar songs in the book, in this analysis, all have a different teaching about awakening. And so Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds is a solar song because we have in the lyrics the girl with the sun in her eyes. And I interpret the teaching is to see the geometric figures, meaning the geometry, meaning the astrology in the sky that are reflected in her eyes. And so as seen on Revolver and other songs on Sgt. Pepper, at the peak of the arc, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds also unifies the solar and the dream threads at the top or the peak of the arc. So as again, I'm saying here that we have awareness, the sun, the solar thread of astrology serves as a navigational tool for the boat on the river. So to me, this is the other dimension that is coming through. Now, of course, John Lennon is not aware of this. He's just a conduit. The astrology, as discussed throughout the book, is where I'm getting this information, is what is going on as being revealed by the broader illustration from astrology, is where I'm drawing these conclusions from. And so the implication is that, astrology here can serve as the guide to assist people in dreaming consciously by clarifying the energetic currents. That to me is another dimension going on here. We're able to see the geometry in the sky to navigate the boat on the river, basically, is what's going on here, integrating the solar and the dream threads in this song. And there's many songs that actually integrate the solar and the dream threads, which to me are the most kind of metaphysical or spiritual songs in the catalog. So this is one of them. Okay, so continuing down, let's go back to the astrology for a minute. And here's Chiron, which is right on the descendant. And look how tight the astrology is. Chiron's right on the descendant and with Saturn. And Chiron's about healing. And in Pisces, might be healing something to do with grief or loss or some kind of yearning. And the numbers are pretty tight. 24 Pisces, we've got Jupiter at 25. We've got Neptune at 24 Scorpio. So that's a very tight grand trine. And then Uranus at 22 Virgo at the tip is still very tight here. So you don't get astrology, as I said, much tighter than that. But I want to draw your attention to Chiron on the descendant. Okay. So we are now moving from the top, the upper hemisphere, down to the lower. And in fact, the lyrics mention, let's go back to that. The lyrics say, follow her down to her bridge by a fountain. Okay, so now we're getting things of the manifest world. A bridge, a fountain, we're going down. And we're going to get more into the idea of manifestation as we go. So we can look at the first couple stanzas of things in the imagination, right? Picture yourself, that's the imagination. And we've got the fantastic imageries of tangerine trees, marmalade skies, that kind of idea. Now we're going down. We're coming down is the point here. And he mentions that word in the lyrics. Okay. So we're moving down. And here we have rocking horse people. Okay, horse people, well, that brings in Chiron. Chiron is literally a horse person. And what a centaur is, which Chiron is the bridging of the conceptual, the human, with the instinctual, the animal. Another example of bridging above to below. Humans have the, more developed sense of imagination, more development of the dream world. Or who knows? I mean, someone can argue that animals have great imagination, but here we're talking about the imagination to create songs like Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds with complex, multi-dimensional reach. So I am sympathetic and believe that animals have advanced consciousness, but I want to just kind of frame the idea that we're looking at something with advanced conceptual kind of understanding, something spiritual with multi-dimensional human characteristics. And then it bridges down to the animal, to the instinctual, to the embodiment on the physical realm. So the centaur is this kind of representation of bridging, these different qualities. The human with the animal, the metaphysical with the physical or the instinctual. So we saw Chiron there on the descendant. So we're bridging realms is the point here. So at this point in the song, we are coming down, we are bridging is where we're headed. Okay, so now we're going to go further into the manifest world as the song continues. We passed that gate, and now John writes about newspaper taxis which appear on the shore. And when we get to the shore, we're on land, right? Because that's what a shore is. We've arrived on land and we're on the earth realm now. And newspaper taxis is what he sings about. So what's going on with that? Well, newspapers are composed of words, of course, the contents of mind. It is our thoughts, the realm of mind, which are like vehicles, taxis, able to take us anywhere on the manifest world. So we have the imagination at the beginning, soaring through the heights of, speculation, imagination, dreams. And then from the dream realm, we're able to then bring things into manifestations through our minds, through the vehicle of words and ideas. And so our thoughts are like the taxis, which we could do anything on the manifest realm. So John also invites us to climb in the back of these taxis with our heads in the clouds. Basically, the point is let's stay connected to the dream realm as our thoughts begin to shape reality on the earth plane, is the interpretation of what's going on here. Okay. Next, we hear about plasticine porters with looking glass ties. So now this is where it gets pretty multidimensional and fascinating. Okay, so the scene shifts to a train station in the song, another location in the manifest world. Let's go back to the lyrics and just review real quick. Okay, so here we have the newspaper taxis appear on the shore waiting to take you away. Climb in the back with your head in the clouds and you're gone. Okay, then the final stanza is where we're at now. Picture yourself on a train in a station with plasticine porters with looking glass ties. Suddenly someone is there at the turnstile, the girl with kaleidoscope eyes. Okay, so here we have a train station, which is in the manifest world, and we've got actual people now. Well, not actual, it's plasticine porters. We'll explain that in a second. But the point being is that we are now here in the manifest world. Okay, so plasticine porters with looking glass ties. Okay, so what is plasticine? We don't have it in America. It's a British thing, and it's modeling clay. It's like Play-Doh. It's like, you know, it's something that kids can have to make little, you know, objects or structures. So it's actually for children's play. You can mold whatever you want, like Play-Doh. And then porters are people who carry bags. So the idea here is we get to shape plasticine, what we bring, porters, into the realm of manifestation, all delivered by our mental intentions. Remember the newspaper taxis that led up to this. Looking glass ties. I did a search, and this was an image I found for looking glass ties, just to get a visual of what that might look like. But the whole point of looking glass ties brings us to Lewis Carroll, the author of Alice in Wonderland, as well as Through the Looking Glass. So this is where another dimension comes in, which is pretty mind-blowing. So what Lewis Carroll decided to do is Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass were specifically written and designed to be reflections of each other. Those books reflect each other. They're written in a way that is exactly the whole theme of this song, is that they parallel each other in this way of imagination and the metaphysical, and then the earth and the physical and the manifest world is what is actually going on with those two books. And this mimics the as above, so below spoken about in astrology, and what this whole song is about, of connecting above and below. All of it is this bridging of the kite, the symmetry of the kite, of folding it down, that what is happening in imagination is going to have resonance in the manifest world. So Lucy herself appears at a turnstile, which is, of course, a type of gate. And so Lucy is the girl at the gate between worlds, like the ascendant, just like we saw with the Ark of Awakening on the ascendant. So the song is bridging the imaginal dream realm with the earth plane below. So all of this you see in the astrology going back here is depicted here, as I was illustrating below. Here's the Arc of Awakening. We can imagine Lucy at the turnstile, the gate between realms, with this structure and of the imaginal in an actual, musical contribution, a song. Further seen, as I mentioned, with the Vesta, a project working with the spiritual. And so all of this is reflected in the astrology going on at the start of recording this song, is exactly what we see here, including the rocking horse people, the horse person of Chiron, and basically everything. So it's a beautiful depiction of that. And then finally, what it all actually is related to is this healing between John and his mother, is what I gleaned and gathered astrologically, and seeing many other pieces of the astrology of the way that this hits John's chart, his mother Julia, and many other things. It all kind of comes together with this idea of the muse, which is the overarching theme of the Beatles book, is that who they're being called by is the muse, their dead mothers connecting from beyond the veil, spiritualism, which is the Neptune and Scorpio piece of the Kite. So as I write here, I'll just read my slide here. With her travels through the sky and bridging of realms, because that's what the muse is about, bridging imagination, dreams to the tangible manifest world, John being alive and part of the incarnated world, is that's what's being bridged. So Lucy is a depiction of this, of the muse bridging worlds. So John hears her call and has a fantastic experience with her presence in his mind. Through poetic symbolic language, Kaleidoscope Eyes, newspaper taxis, etc., they create a message of epic metaphysical proportions. The strongest connection between John and Julia in their astrology is the archetype of Aquarius, which is the one most connected to metaphysical systems, including astrology, pointing to the geometry in the sky. So Julia, John's deceased mother, she had Ceres, which goes with nurturing and nourishment and mother-child connections. Her Ceres was in Aquarius, and it was conjunct John's moon, his Aquarius moon. So Julia is nurturing her son, John, through the archetype of Aquarius, which is metaphysical systems such as astrology, which is what I believe this song is pointing to. And she does this through a journey that reveals the broad metaphysical paradigm of astrology. Julia also has her Ceres conjunct Jupiter, Uranus, and Aquarius, which right there, Jupiter can go with belief systems or philosophy or things that provide meaning and purpose. And Uranus and Aquarius very specifically equates with metaphysical systems such as astrology. So that is the way she is nurturing her son. So my view here, or the hypothesis, is this is all being done instinctually, unconsciously. Is just happening through him. And he's writing a song and the lyrics that are a reflection of these other dimensions that he himself may or may not be aware of, but the astrology reveals it, which is what the mind-blowing part of it is. And so all of these dimensions are going on. Now, ultimately, as I said, the transformation is of death. Now, so much of the grief, the suffering, the songwriting in the earlier parts of the catalog, in my view, has a lot to do with them calling out for nurturance because of unresolved death, not accepting death. In fact, there's 30 death songs in the catalog, and it's actually one of the major themes. And so the idea is that through this development spiritually, through the ability to have this bridging of worlds, to be a conduit for the muse, this the understanding of death, because initially, you lose someone, you think that's it. But developing spiritually, we can actually have a relationship with those who die. And even more so, we can actually have a collaboration with those who die, which is what I believe this song is miraculously depicting, and many others, as I write in the book, is that the idea of death is being completely transformed. So I write here to close this presentation, and then we'll have time for questions, is ultimately Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds involves powerful spiritual healing. John was desperately yearning for reunion, and here he is, whisked away by his mom for an amazing journey. What they shared could not have been experienced while she was alive. We might see that even in the most tragic events, there could be buried treasures of value and meaning, maybe even diamonds. As I mentioned, there could be something of immense value here. What kind of price tag could you put on that to be able to reconnect with a loved one and collaborate and create a song of this much multi-dimensional reach? I mean, that to me would be pretty valuable. So the underlying death issue is transformed into vibrant, life-affirming joy and wondrous fascination for many of the song's listeners, the ultimate transformation. And this is the work of the Beatles, to take a sad song and make it better, a line from Hey Jude. The whole catalog is the transmutation of things that were painful into creative, uplifting, life-affirming joy. So death turns into life, turns into joy. Sadness turns into joy. And John and Paul, and also, the rest of the Beatles, but what their work was about was creating songs based on this type of spiritual process, which is pretty remarkable. So, I want to open it up now. Okay, here we go. I'm back to looking at all of you.
Bravo.
Good.
No, we can't. I want to acknowledge that was awesome. Thank you.
Cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Heather.
I'll second that.
Yeah, Eric, thank you for all. I mean, this is like one section of what this massive body of work that you spent 5 years creating. This is brilliant.
Thank you. Yeah,
So
it's just
cool.
one out of many. I mean,
Right,
there's
one of many. It's so depth psychological, so yeah. Anyway,
I thought that this was one of the coolest essays in the book, so I wanted to create this presentation because I found it to be so cool. So I want to hear if there's other thoughts or questions or anything about this on people's minds.
So if anybody has questions, go ahead and unmute yourself and present the question. And while you're thinking about it, let me just say that to hear you talk about this after having read it, and it just makes me realize again how vast this topic is, and how, I mean, you've talked for an hour on just this one little tiny aspect of the book, but it's major. And the whole book, as I said before, I just kept saying wow. Wow, as I read the your connections and the way you word everything. It's just incredible.
Thank you, Sue. Yeah, and what a help you really were in crafting. This is why it took so long, is the editing took a long time because we went through it so many times to get it as well done as we could. So, so thank you so much, Sue, for saying that. Other thoughts or reflections or questions about this or anything really?
Orally, go ahead and unmute.
Let's see. Can you hear me?
Yes, barely.
Yeah, I think my phone has a bad
That's
mic.
better.
Yeah, I'll just speak louder. I was wondering if Eric, if you like, do we know that they didn't know about the astrology?
I have read nothing to indicate that they would. I read 30 to 40 Beatles books for this. There's nothing in any book that would suggest that John was aware of the astrology at all. So I don't have any information that they would. The way astrology ties in to the Beatles story is that in 1968, which is a year later, is that when they founded Apple and they got the headquarters of Apple, they did hire an in-house astrologer that was there at the Apple location. And then Yoko was an astrology enthusiast and brought that into her relationship with John. But Yoko came into the story in late 67, after Sergeant Pepper, is when their relationship was really developing. And so, no, I don't think that they were aware of the astrology at all. In fact, I mean, what they were doing at this time, you know, they were creating Sergeant Pepper. They ceased touring. They were getting involved with metaphysical pursuits. George was the most involved. And George was more into astrology or metaphysical things than John and Paul were. I think later on, John and Paul might have got more into metaphysics, but at this point, they were still in their mid-20s and really focused on songwriting and being Beatles, and it was just really developing. So no, I don't think that they were really students of astrology, never mind bringing in the astrology to construct these songs. I don't think that that was going on. I think that it was all just synchronous.
Cool, thank you.
Is my view. If you find any information that says that they were consciously working with astrology, let me know, because I didn't see anything to indicate that that would be the case. Nothing.
Yeah, I'm really interested in this specific topic because I feel like it happens for a lot of artists that they, as you said, you know, channel these big forces, but and some of them in brilliant ways, right? Some other ones as well. But yeah, they don't seem to be aware, which is cool because it means you can just be in it. I think for me, it has helped to become aware of those more metaphysical forces in order to harness them. But some people are really good at doing that without.
Yeah, I would say that the focus for them in the book is not on studying astrology, is the development of being intuitive. Particularly the ability to be channeling things through dreams, through altered state of consciousness. To me, that was their metaphysical orientation, was more intuitive, more Neptunian, rather than Uranian, dealing with actual concepts or systems metaphysically. I don't think they were into that, but they certainly developed with meditation, with spiritual practice, with dreams, and famously with altered states through drug use. That was more of their focus than studying astrology, is my understanding.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Other thoughts, questions, or reflections, or anything?
And it just shows you. It seems like there's a lot of Beatles books coming out on the market now, and yours was first, Eric.
Mine was first.
From what yeah, all of a sudden I'm seeing all these new
Oh,
Beatles books coming out on the market. I already had your book. Yeah, but it was just been recently.
yeah. Well, my book didn't really come out until the summer. It's only been a couple months old. It was just over the summer, and then the Get Back movie and some
Yeah,
other.
and the movie, right?
But I would say, as being a scholar now, there's Beatles books there's
So
tons of
many.
them, and they're released all the time. There's been over the last 50 years, there's been numerous Beatles books. So that's why I said first, is because I don't
Yeah.
see it. There's hundreds of Beatles
I
books.
just meant recently, as of recent, I'm seeing new books hit the market.
Uh-huh. Yeah, no, it's a whole industry. I mean, they're that famous, and
Yeah.
there's that much interest that there's a lot of Beatles books out there on the market, and will probably continue to come out.
Yeah.
Wow.
Anything else?
Hi, Eric.
Yeah.
This is Kim.
Hey, Kim.
I found your presentation totally fascinating. But what really wowed me was when you showed the chart. It's like a flip of my chart. I'm June 26th of 67, and I'm 26 degrees Pisces rising. So that chart is very similar to mine, but it's just flipped over.
Interesting.
And I've
yeah.
always loved this song. So I guess I was born in that energy.
You were.
And I have a beautiful stained glass kaleidoscope that was my grandmother's. It's like one of my most favorite objects. And I'm just like, wow. I just never realized that song was right there. That's pretty cool. So
Yeah. Well, whatever our astrological attunement is our frame of reference, and we're gonna, connect with things that are, along those lines, with that vibe. So
and I love Alice in Wonderland.
Sure.
I've always identified with that.
Yep, and probably the whole Sgt. Pepper album,
Yeah.
which came out in June of 67.
It's just I enjoyed that. That's cool. And I did get your book, and I'll be honest with you, I have been working so much, I haven't had a chance to read it yet. And this is really inspiring me to go make time to sit down and read.
That's fine. It'll always be there whenever you want to pay attention. I mean, it's a big book. It's almost 500
It
pages.
is.
So it takes
I wanted to learn time, to really have, anyway. But yeah, thank you.
Good. Thanks, Kim.
You're welcome.
Other thoughts or reflections or questions?
Eric, hi, it's Nina. I'm sorry you can't see me. I don't have very good light in here. Did you ever try and talk to Yoko Ono about this stuff, or have it just, communicate with her?
I will be. I'm just beginning now, kind of my push of promotion and representation of this, and I needed the book came out a couple months ago, and I needed a couple months to kind of digest what I did and reorient back to myself. And this eclipse that we're about to have on Saturday, we're recording this on December 2nd, 2021. On the 4th is an eclipse that hits my chart pretty dramatically. And it's all about getting the word out and making a push. And I'm going to be sending this book to the people involved, including Yoko, and having a dialogue and see what they want to do with it. If they want to, if they're interested in the subject matter, if they want to, talk about it at all or whatever, I'm going to share it more. I haven't done that yet, but I will. And I'm sure that Yoko and maybe others might find it to be of interest, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, great. Yeah, you never know. She's pretty, I'm sure she's pretty interested in this stuff.
Well, she's the one who really brought in a lot of astrology, to John in their relationship. In fact, you can read in the literature that because Yoko was into astrology, she was seen as flaky and, as a weird influence or what have you. But she is an Aquarius, and I think plays a very important role in that regard. But the muggles, as they say, the skeptics,
Right.
have criticized Yoko for such things.
Yes, I'm sure. Yeah.
But the Beatles were into spirituality. That's quite clear with their focus on meditation. So, of
Yeah.
course, in my view, it's in alignment.
Hmm. Great.
Other thoughts or questions or anything on people's mind before we conclude? All right. Well, Sue, I think we can conclude then. We can stop the recording, and thank you for hosting me, and for anyone who is watching this, for your interest, and people who are interested in the book or have read it. Thank you for your interest, and feel free to email if you have thoughts or questions. I'm available. I'm beginning to have more dialogue about this material, and I welcome it all. And it's a real honor and a pleasure to present this material and bring it to the world. So thank you for your interest.
Thank you. We are so thrilled to have you. I'll put your contact information in the details of the YouTube video, and perhaps we'll talk you into doing another one.
I'd be glad to. I'd love to.
Great.
Awesome. Thank you.
That was
Thank you.
awesome. Thank you, Eric.
Great.
Congratulations. That was
Thanks.
amazing.
Appreciate that.